everyone. This is Mihwa Lee, Steamy Romance Author. Welcome to Desire and Dialogue. I am thrilled to have Christina Diane today. I'm
Woo!
so happy to be chatting with her today. She's a fellow Steamy Historical Romance Author.
Yes.
She's a hybrid author who has published through, or going to be publishing through Dragonblade, as well as self-publishing. And you self-published 2 novellas so far?
2 so far. That is
Okay.
correct.
And her second one,
Awesome.
The Earl and the Vixen, has released today.
Woo!
As a fellow author, I can say that I don't know if you feel this way, but releasing a book, the release date is more exciting than your own birthday.
Oh,
Isn't it? Like
absolutely.
all that work, all of a sudden you're giving birth to it and it's fantastic. So how is it going with
Oh,
Earl and the Vixen?
it's absolutely that. I feel like I got up this morning, my husband had gotten me a iced coffee to start my day to kick off like release day, and I've pretty much been at my computer talking to readers or talking to other authors all day, which is exciting, and it's so cool to see how many people are willing to share and willing to contribute. It's just been that's humbling in itself too, of like how many people get invested in your journey and want to help like spread the word. And so it's just all that gratitude and like appreciation. I'm trying to like make sure I see all of it and like thank everybody today. And thank you for having me.
Fantastic. I mean, I love, I don't know about other genres because I've only written in historical romance so far as well. But I love the historical romance community. Not only the readers, but fellow authors and reviewers. They're just so lovely and supportive.
I find that as well. It's amazing. Like as a newer author in the scene, like they just like welcome you in and give you a big hug and like here you're here now. Like let's do this. And that was like very surprising to me coming in. I thought I
Oh,
would have
really?
to. I felt like you have to like prove yourself a little more. I don't know, but it's like they just kind of let you in and I've made like so many amazing friends.
Well, that's wonderful. So have I. But I think it also speaks to your personality as well and your social media presence. Your positive, vibrant, bright, you know, encouraging presence that really helps welcome, like other people feel welcome as well. Yeah.
I try.
So tell me about the Earl and the Vixen. I mean, I love, you sent me an excerpt for us to read together.
Mhm.
And like, I just love how feisty and like how she is, I don't know, just trying to get under his skin,
Mhm.
with everything she says and to make him jealous. And he's like, becoming this primitive feral being. And it's just so delicious. So,
It's
yeah, it's like Romeo and Juliet with the twist, isn't it?
It's a little
Premise?
bit, because their parents have a feud and they, fell in love kinda young and, they acted upon that love and then they were, torn apart and they don't expect to find themselves and in the way that the story is set up, you don't exactly know kind of the catalyst of what kind of happened there other than
Mhm.
Eliza receives a note telling her that from him telling her that he did never loved her. And so I know, and that happens early, so that's not a big spoiler because that's early before we even get to like the heart of the book. And so then they don't expect to see each other at this house party again. And Eliza, like that experience just toughened her up. I mean, she became a little bit of a ball buster, and she
Mhm.
doesn't have any desire to conform to what society expects from her or to what any man might expect from her. She's doing her own
Mhm.
thing. Never
Yeah.
expects to see him again.
Mhm.
Definitely not at the same house party where they're going to be trapped
Mhm.
together for a little bit. And you can imagine the explosion that starts happening with the two of them, like
The
trying to.
vengeance. The
Yes,
vengeance. You deserted me. Well, now you want me. Here I am, but you can't have me.
pretty much.
It's
And but then she also wants him, so it's like,
yeah,
like
yeah.
she's totally wants him, but
Hmm.
doesn't necessarily want to admit that either.
Yeah. She wants to play hard to get a little bit.
A little bit, yes, yes.
All right. So set up the scene for us. This excerpt we're going to be reading together.
Okay, so in this scene, Nick had just Nick had
Ah,
just
oh,
saw her on the terrace with
mhm,
another gentleman and in a situation where it definitely appeared as if she were going to welcome some attention from this gentleman. And so it ends up that he breaks in and makes an excuse to get the gentleman for him to have to leave her presence and then tries to have a conversation with her and she storms off And then this scene picks up where he actually pulls her into a room and
All right, everyone, hold your bladder because this scene is delicious. You don't want to miss it. So I'm gonna be doing the Nick part, and Christina's going to do the narrator and the girl part. All right,
yes.
ready?
Ready.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Oh, okay. This is my boy voice.
Woo,
Go
you
for it.
nailed it.
Yeah.
Nick fought to keep his hurt and anger under control. If he had arrived even a few seconds later, she would have been in the man's arms and his lips would have been upon hers. That was something he could just not allow. Last I checked, she started, if I wish to fuck a handsome gentleman, I am free to do so. His blood boiled and he stepped closer to her.
No, you aren't.
He ground out. She was right, of course, but she should have married him. She was always supposed to be his, and even with all that had happened between them and all that he still didn't understand, he still wanted her. That much he knew for certain. His body, his cock, his heart, his soul, all wanted her. She closed the distance between them, stopping just out of his reach. From what I hear, he's quite well known for his prowess. I'm sure he'll be able to satisfy me in bed. Perhaps he'll even teach me a few things. He released a low growl and stepped closer so he could pull her to him.
I would not allow you to fuck Irvin or any other man.
He bent his head to kiss her collarbone and neck, causing her to sway in his arms. At least he still affected her. She didn't pull away, and instead matched his dare by licking along his jaw until she reached his ear. It is no business of yours if I should wish to come all over his thick cock, she whispered. He didn't believe she actually knew the girth of Irvine's manhood, but her words still grated on Nick's nerves.
Perhaps you should bend over that desk so I can remind you who you belong to, Eliza.
He said, running his hands down her back and clasping her bottom, pulling her against his rock-hard erection. Releasing a low mewl, she placed her hands on his chest, pushing him slightly back. Perhaps you should drop to your knees and do something more useful with your tongue. She was going to be the death of him, but if she intended that as a challenge, he wouldn't back down. He pressed his lips to hers, and she swept her tongue into his mouth, taking control of the kiss. He moved her backwards until she was backed against the furniture. When her bottom was pressed against the side of the large oak desk, he broke the kiss.
Lift your skirts.
He commanded. She did as he said, and her beautiful slit was bare before him within a nest of dark curls. He licked his lips and dropped to his knees. When he ran his tongue along her pearl, she leaned her bottom against the desk and released a stream of moans. He sucked her nub, and she clasped his head in her hands. It wasn't enough. He needed to show her what she'd missed, what she could have every single day for the last 3 years if she hadn't given up on them. He pulled away and looked up at her.
Bend over that desk.
He said. After that lackluster performance, she asked, smirking at him.
She's so sassy, so feisty. I love her. Like, my gosh, that's so delicious. I love that scene. So I take it it's very steamy.
Oh, yes. It's novella length, and there are 5 full explicit scenes with full happy endings,
Bless
as
you.
well as some self scenes with happy endings that I did not include in the 5 count because they're just a little faster, but kind of let you like in on the longing that the two of them have, whether they're together
Oh,
or apart.
bless your horny heart. Oh, that works for me.
Same. It's like
I
you
love
need it.
that. They need it. Yeah, and it totally makes sense because they have a history together,
Mhm.
right? It's not like insta lust. Not really. It's
Yes.
a bit more realistic in that because they have a history together, because of the complex emotions they've experienced, that they would be all over each other with that love hate relationship going on.
I wanted to do that with this story because the premise of this entire series, so
Mhm.
the Unlikely Betrothal series, it all takes place at the same house party. So it's 5 different couples at the same house party, plus other guests. So you have some other like smattering of other guests. And so for their story, I did, there are some insta lust stories, or at least like this insta attraction or things in some of the other ones in the series. And so
Mhm.
I wanted to at least I was trying to create some dynamics where it wouldn't be all that, and you would have some like the depth of like people that knew each other before they came into the house party as well.
That's interesting. I really like that concept.
It was
And I
hard to
can,
write, but it was fun.
oh, you would make a great movie.
Well,
Totally
that's my
would.
hope. Like, hey, maybe
Yeah.
somebody will like this as a
Yeah.
movie. But writing
Right.
it, when you go through, you have to, like, if I had somebody at breakfast on this day in one book, I had to
Hmm.
remember that I put them in, like, when I was writing their story. Now, I wrote each one as a standalone. You don't have to read them all.
Hmm.
But if you do read them all, I think it adds richness to each of the characters because you kind of see what everyone was doing at different times during the story, which is kind of fun.
Yeah. I mean, it does sound like a logistic nightmare. But yeah, better you than me.
That's why they're all
That's
written now, because I had to
yeah,
write them all because it was
all
like, oh, if
kind
I
of
need to
save
make any
time.
changes. Yeah. So that's why they're
Excellent,
all written
awesome.
now.
So when's the next one being released?
On January 7th. So I'm releasing them
Okay.
all 6 weeks apart.
Oh, excellent. So we won't have to wait too long after this one.
No, and I do tease the next book in at the end of or I tease with the first chapter of the next book at the end of this one, just so people can get a little taste of like how the style's going to continue on like in the next book.
So this is published on Amazon now.
Correct.
So guys, go get your books and pre-order. Are others set up for pre-order?
They are all set up for pre-order. So the entire series is
Yes.
up there.
They're at special price, right?
They are.
During
So
pre-order.
they are all special price for pre-order, and then I've got the Earl and the Vixen will be 99 cents even through Thanksgiving weekend here in the U.S. And then they're all also in Kindle Unlimited.
Now, the first novella, what's the title of it and what is that about?
Only a Rake Will Do, and that is a novella that you can actually get for free if you join my mailing list. Ooh.
And how did they join your mailing list?
Just my website, ChristinaDianeBooks.com, and then there's a link up top, join mailing list, and then it'll have you join and then send you to the book funnel link to download the book. It's a short novella. Like I think it's about like 60 pages or so, but it has 3 full scenes in it as well for a nice little short teaser, and a total cinnamon roll beefcake male lead who also wears spectacles. So
You have it all covered.
I was like, it's all there for you.
Yeah, and with foot fetish. So now you are amazing because you are, relatively new. But even before you published your first novella and you got your contract with Dragonblade, you had like so many followers, primarily on Instagram, I think. Am I right?
And TikTok.
And TikTok. And your handle is Christina Diane Author?
Correct, on both.
On both. So look her up. So I was amazed by your journey because you did everything right before you published. So can you take us through what you did to get yourself there?
So I'm the type of personality that when I decide to do something, I'm just like, I just go all in and I'm like, I'll figure it out. I'll learn the things. So when I started writing the first book, which is, I was going to release it, but then I ended up signing with Dragonblade. So now that book will come out in the distant future. Feels distant, I think early 2026 with Dragonblade instead. And when I first sat down to write that book, I was like, I'm going to go ahead and create my author handles. I was like, I'm going to go ahead and start figuring out my author persona. I'm going to create my author handles and just start making connections out in the community. That was the first time I really got exposed to like Book Talk and Bookstagram. And I just started posting similarly to how Bookstagrammers and Book Talkers do. So I started posting the stuff I was reading. I started posting stuff I was writing because I didn't have a book to market. So instead of focusing on like trying to sell a book, I just focused on being a part of the community. And I focused more on just like my journey and who I was as a person and my reads and different things. And
When
through
was
that,
this? When did you start this?
I think I started my accounts like March of this year.
Okay.
It was like March or April of this year. And then I joined a Bookstagram challenge that another editor was hosting, and I was like, oh, this sounds like fun. And so I was like learning. That really helped me learn some of the ins and outs of like the types of content and some of the content strategies. And I made a lot of friends that way. And then you kind of just get invited to like little groups, and you get invited to different things from being in the Bookstagram community. And then I did, and I've done some stuff like you've seen like the follow trains. I used to do those. I don't do them anymore because I don't have any kind of time for that. But I started out doing some of those to build a foothold in the Bookstagram community, and I was just another Bookstagrammer. And so now, like with when I have releases and big moments, I have various groups that I'm just like, hey, I'm doing stuff. Will y'all give it some love? And then people will kind of pounce on it and go and give it, some likes and some engagement and whatnot. And then of course people that have also followed through and joined my ARC team because I made friends with a lot of those influencers and folks. So now they're joining my ARC team and they're posting about the release today. It's just amazing how it's come together. And I do think it's just because I took that time to just be another human that's out here that loves books, because that's true and that's who I am, and just kind of made friends. And it's served me well, I feel like, in how it's created the following.
Yes, I feel like you did everything right, and I wish I had done that myself. So the takeaway is it's never too early to start. So set up your author account, figure out what kind of author or persona you want to be, and then make friends and review and make contact and join groups and collaborations and all that. And don't be a jerk, right? Obviously,
Don't
you're
be
a
a jerk.
very kind and nice and yeah, positive person. That really helps. Otherwise, nobody wants to be your friend.
You gotta share other
I know.
people's stuff too, because you can't expect,
Yeah.
it's like can't go into it expecting everybody's gonna do stuff for you. It's like you've got to
Hmm.
also follow through with sharing everybody else's stuff. And every time I'm
Hmm.
scrolling, if I see a new release, if I see anything, I know I don't catch everything because I'm not on there 24/7. But if I see it, I try to comment
Hmm.
or share, especially if it's one of my fellow Histrom folks. And the other thing I was gonna say is not to be afraid to pivot, because one thing I did, I started out with one set of branding. I have fuchsia hair. Can't and I was like, I started out with my color branding being more fuchsia, and I was like, I'm just going to lean into that, and I'm going to make that more of my branding. Well, fuchsia really clashes with like Regency pastel colors. It like really does not work. And so I did a rebrand recently. I was like, that's fine. We started out that way, and then we just kind of made it a fun thing, and I totally rebranded and changed my logo and changed my whole aesthetic for like what my Instagram looks like and what my website looks like. So it's like start early, but also don't be afraid to pivot. If you find like, hey, you started down a path thinking one thing, and then the more you learn, just keep learning and do better.
And were you courting agents at the same time while you were writing your novellas, your
I was
self-published?
not. And
No.
so
Okay.
I don't have an agent. I just queried Dragonblade directly. They were my target publisher because I read so many Dragonblade novels.
Mm.
Before I'd even started writing, or started writing even my series, I've read so many Dragonblade novels. I was like, that's probably the publisher I want to target. And I really didn't expect anything to come from it. It's like, I wrote my first novel. I've written before, but it was mostly nonfiction, or it was like review kind of stuff. I did freelance writing of writing like more blog and lifestyle kind of stuff. It was my first like real try at fiction since I was a kid. And I was like, I didn't expect that much to come of it. And then then of course when you get that email, it's like, oh my gosh, this is happening. This is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine the shock, the surprise, and the surrealness of it all. Yeah. So, did you always plan to write Steamy?
Yes, absolutely. Because that's my
Is that all
favorite
you
to
read?
read.
Mhm.
I do read a little bit all over the place. I would say in the last year, I've definitely honed in. I read mostly Regency romance. I'd say historical in general, but mostly like Regency and Victorian. And then I also do really enjoy dark romance, contemporary dark romance. Or hey, I'm here for historical dark too. But any kind of dark romance. So those are my typical, like right now, go-to genres. I also really love thrillers. And then I've also read some various like contemporary, like I've read, I think I've read everything by like Taylor Jenkins Reid and like Kristen Hanna. And so I read some of those kind of authors and reads too. But for the most part, like my usual go-to reads are the more like steamy reads.
And are your friends and family aware of your Steamy writing?
They are. I don't even remotely keep it secret. I just keep it right out there. Here you go. This is what it is. Um, totally joke that, I'm the smut dealer.
You're smart. And how does your husband find your Steamy scenes?
I actually bounce a lot of ideas off of him. So I'll be like, hey, this is kind of the direction I want to take this. Like, where do you want to go with that? Or he's actually come up with a couple plot points for a couple different books of
Oh,
like, oh, here's
nice.
what I'm thinking. I need this kind of element here. What do you think about these? And like he's come up with some things. And so we are both very aligned. We've both agreed to like invest in me and in this whole venture. And the hope is like probably anybody, the hope is one day I'll get to quit my corporate job and just do this full
Hmm.
time because this is the fun job.
It's so much fun, isn't it? To
The
live in
conversations
your
you
head.
have, if like I've my various, author friends, you included, and it's like the conversations that you have when you're like, oh, I'm writing this scene, and like, got them on their
Yeah,
knees and like whatever.
yeah. The first conversation I had this morning was, yeah, I want to read a book where the man is breastfeeding, off of, or the woman is breastfeeding him, obviously not lactating. Like, where can I find a book like that? Like, I don't know. I might have to refer you to somebody else. But so, do you have any kinks or anything unusual in novels that you just published?
I These are a little more low on the kink side. I think they're just high on the spice. I guess unless you consider anal play a kink, because that's
Hmm.
in there.
Hmm. Okay.
But I went a little lighter on this series from a
Me too.
kink factor,
Yeah. Yeah.
not light on the spice and like the angst factor. And then my next series that I'm writing is going to be more darker themes, and I'm going to explore several things there.
So what does
once
it
I
mean
can
to
get
be
started.
darker themed? What does it mean
So,
to be darker themed?
so I'm going to play around with a little more like BDSM and a little more, I should say, like morally gray men in the sense that they are going to be unalivers in the sense of I don't know what we're allowed to say, but they're just
Anything.
going to be morally gray. They are not going to be your typical like good guy that does once he meets the girl he does no wrong and he kind of makes all the
I
right
love,
decisions. They're going to make bad decisions.
yeah, I love morally gray. I love real race. I love real evil men that, of course, transform into something else in the end,
A
because
little
that's
more
always depressing.
controlling, a little more
Yeah,
manipulation, a little
yeah.
more of those things that are not vanilla stories for sure.
Yeah, men we wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole in real life. Yeah,
Right,
that's
right. But in a
that's not
book,
how
it's
it works.
great.
Yeah. You want to kill someone? Go ahead.
Totally. It's like
Yeah.
totally here for it.
Yeah. So, were there any surprising things about writing or about your author journey, other than you already mentioned that you were surprised by how supportive and
Mm,
welcoming everyone was.
yeah. I think the imposter syndrome, I did not fully appreciate how real that was until you really start putting your work out there. And every time somebody tells me that they're going to read my book, I just get like so nervous. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, and the imposter syndrome of like, ooh, do I even deserve a seat at this table? Like, I don't know that I do. And like, just those things that you start to tell yourself. And then, the whole like nail biting moments, especially when I sent out my arcs and like waiting for the first reviews to hit and what people are going to think about it. And if you're going to get the messages of like, oh, I just really didn't like that. So sorry. Or,
Mhm.
he's like yourself and all of those things. I think, you know, I knew it, but just until you feel it is a whole other thing. And I think it just surprised me on how much, like how hard and heavy that can hit and how you have to really work to put things in place to like protect your own mental health and to protect yourself from going into those spirals and like then negatively impacting like how you think about your craft overall.
Absolutely. And I mean, the first negative review hurt so much. I mean, personally, I knew I wasn't perfect, and I knew that everyone was going to like my book, but still, it really hurt. But after 2 dozen, it's like, bring it on. I developed thick skin, and I learned to put things more in perspective. But you're absolutely right about having to protect yourself for your mental health and not go down into deep dark place where you are, miserable over just that one negative review. Um, yeah, so that's a really important point. If you don't think you can handle negative reviews, then don't read them.
That's what so I'm better with it now. When it first started, it was like, oh my gosh. And like you said, you get that first one and you're just like,
Mhm.
and it just like crushes you.
Yeah.
And then, you think about yourself as a reader, like every book's not for every person and like that's okay. And now for the most part, I don't read reviews. I have my assistant read them and then she just pulls out the stuff that's like she wants me to see that's like, oh, this is like a good quote for marketing and stuff like that. And then I
Nice.
have various because of, my Bookstagram influence, a lot of my ARC readers have been tagging me and stuff, but they don't obviously it's because they're tagging me, it's all good stuff. So it's like I do get that kind of like some positive reinforcement from like getting to see that, but I try really hard to stay out of Goodreads and try to stay out of the Amazon review section.
Mhm. And after a while, we get too busy to even notice the reviews. I'm sorry to say. We appreciate reviews very much, but we don't know if there's a new one or old one just because they don't go in chronological order.
No,
Yeah, so there's really, like, unless we look for them, we don't know. And we
yeah,
need to
for
move
sure.
on and focus on writing.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. It's somebody else told me, another author, and they were like kind of helping me through one of those like little moments. They're like, reviews really are for readers more so than they're for authors. Like you shouldn't look to reviews for any like craft feedback or any of that because you shouldn't change your style or craft because of one review. Like you still this is your art and this is how you think about your art. But they were like reviews are for readers. It's to help readers like make decisions about their books and what they want to read and like some stuff and we see it all the time because we use them in marketing when somebody rates something low and they're like, this was a there was so much steam in this that this should have been, this is basically porn or whatever it'll say. And then you're just like, hey, that's marketing. Like, cool,
Yeah,
thanks for that.
exactly. Yeah, now we're all wishing for those reviews. Too much sex in this. Yes.
I got one on
Uh,
Only a Rake Will Do. It was a 3-star, so I was impressed actually with the
yeah.
review that she gave a 3-star, but it said like that it was a bit on the crude side. And I was like,
Mm.
hey,
Yes.
cool. Thanks.
Exactly. That's what I'm going for. Yeah.
Like, yeah, I was going for that. So cool.
Yeah. I do find it helpful when I'm looking for a book to read and there are reviews that mention the same thing. Then I feel like, yeah, that must be valid, and I can decide if that's something that I want to spend time with or not.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Trends. And that's what I'd
Hmm.
ask my assistant to pull out. Like, hey, if I get a stream of like 10 2-star reviews and they're all making like a similar like theme, like that's probably something that I may want to know from just a story structure or whatever the case may be. But if you're not seeing a trend there, then everybody's entitled to their opinions and everybody's not going to like everything. I don't like everything either. So, yeah, like that's totally fair and fine.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Mhm.
stay out of it. I like totally try to keep from looking at much of it if I can help it. Because, and to your point, you get so busy, especially now, like once you get multiple releases going and like multiple projects and deadlines and all the things, like it gets hard to keep up with, especially when you're also trying to maintain a social media presence and keep up with the people that are interacting with you there.
Yes, that can be a full-time job. Now, I love your graphics. Did you study how to do designs, or is it just
Oh,
natural?
oh no. So some of it is my assistant, some of it's me just trying out different things. And then depending on which graphics, like my covers for this new series, like I had those professionally done. And then she also created like my A+ content and stuff like that for the book. I do not feel like I always feel like my stuff is never good enough. And then
Mm.
people will message me and just be like, "Oh, that was really cute." And I'm like, "I'm so glad you think so," because I am just.
You're your worst critic.
I think that must be it. Yeah, just we're
Yeah.
always our own worst critics. I'm like, well, I'm glad it's resonating with you because I was not sure about it. But my assistant does most of my social posts throughout the day now. She does. That was one of the things to keep up with family and the work, the corporate job, and be able to keep up with my writing and the goals that I have for just wanting to get my backlist built. Um, that was one thing I had to like take a little bit of a. I couldn't keep up with the creation anymore, but I do all my own engagement because I do feel like it's important if people are engaging with my content and I want that to come from me because that's something that voice is always carried through when I started my accounts, and I feel like if I backed out of that and passed that off to somebody else and had them pretending to be me behind the scenes, I feel like I would lose that connection. And so
Yeah.
I don't do as much of like the posting and scheduling and creation of it, but I'm definitely the one that's if it's commenting, it's me.
Yeah. You mentioned the importance of authenticity in
Hmm.
your social media presence, and I think that is so true. And people can tell whether it's you or not because you have a very, you're unique,
Right.
a unique individual.
And I want people to, it's like I think that's part of what it is, even with the books. It's like we want to be liked. Like we want people to like us. And same was like my books. I want you to like my books, but I also want you to like me as a person.
Mhm.
It's like,
Yeah. Well, I outsourced being a mom and taking care of cats instead. So I didn't have time for both. I thought family can go, yeah,
you're like, "Yeah,
go
forget them.
survive on your own. Well, they're teenagers, so how old are yours?
Mine are 14 and 11.
Okay, yeah, so they still need a bit more hands-on. Mine are 14 and 16, so
Mm.
I'm like, yeah, you do for yourself whatever. You have hands, you have feet.
Mine are both boys, and so for the most part, as long as you keep them fed, which I mean, you don't even know the expense of children until you have 2, like, almost teenage boys, because it's like,
Oh,
oh man,
the way they eat.
the way they eat. If we can keep them fed and we can keep their video games charged, like, for the most part, you can just not hear from them for a while.
Mhm. Yeah, forget that you have kids.
It's like that part's pretty easy, but then as soon as they get hungry or the hanger sets in or, mine, since they're 3 years apart, they do like to bicker with each other a little bit.
Mhm,
They do know what I do as well. They obviously have
mhm.
not read any of it and they don't fully appreciate what it is, but they at least they appreciate enough to know that I write romance novels and whatnot.
Do they think it's cool, or do they?
I think they think it's cool. I mean, the whole family's been engaged in like the release today and asking like, what's going on. And like my husband went and kind of proofed my Amazon page and he was like checking different things to see how it was coming up in search. So the whole family's kind of invested. I think they support me and they want me to be able to do what I want to do, which is to be able to do this full time. Because I
Fantastic.
find this stuff so fun. Like it's
Mhm.
so much work and there's so many details, but
Yes.
I love it. I get excited when
Mhm.
it's just like, oh, you're coordinating this thing, and you got this takeover, and you got this activity. It's like I just find it fun.
It is absolutely a hoot. And release parties and just getting to know different people and feedback, and your head constantly thinking about the next plot, and everything's research now.
Oh yeah, all the research and and I'm doing a few different anthologies next year because I felt like that would be a great way to network with other authors and to expand my reach and
Absolutely, yeah.
bring attention to this series because everything I'm writing in the same world. So they all sort of either know each other or, somehow you can draw a line to how each story connects to another series. So even my like Dragonblade series is still you can draw some parallels to the other stories that I have. And I'm so excited to see like how some of these anthologies do next year. Uh, to see like what that release experience is like compared to what like this release experience of like releasing a series is truly, all my
Yeah.
content.
It's a lot less work, that's for sure, because you don't have to worry about the cover. You don't have to worry about marketing as much. And yeah, of course, you have to do your own promos, but still to have a group of authors, supporting you and promoting each other, it's just exponentially easier.
I'm
I've
very excited to see
benefited
how it goes.
hugely. Yeah, yeah. Me too. I have a few booked for next year, and just the sense of community and doing something together, a group project. Uh, yeah, it's so much fun.
I know, I agree. I think we're in a couple together next year. So,
We must be. I think we're in the Redeemed Drake,
mhm.
right? And the spring, it used to be spring, but I think it's going to be something else now
Yep.
with Andrew Janelle.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's going to be.
We're going to be promoing each other. It's going to be a fun time. Very
That's
excited for the
right.
Redeemed Rake because I just think that cause is so
Oh,
fantastic for us promoting for breast cancer.
yes, absolutely. Yeah. I think half of the proceeds are going to breast
Mhm.
cancer, if I'm, don't
I
quote me
think
on
it.
that.
I think you're
And
right.
it's a great cause. And especially with a friend of mine who have just gone through it. And thank goodness she continues to recover. But yeah, I mean, I couldn't be happier about supporting breast cancer research.
I think I'm like it's one of my most like excited projects. I've already written the story for it. I just need to. One of my beta readers is going to read it real quick for me and just make sure because it's a shorter story. Just make sure that it flows the way I want it and it translates how I wanted it to, and then get it to my editor in January. And I've been so
Okay,
excited for this one because it's just like,
I didn't need to hear that because I haven't started
sorry.
it yet.
Well, I think Eliana's been done, so
Shush. Yeah, well, yeah, I'm
she
not
was making me
surprised.
feel bad.
I have a concept, at least. That's something.
Hey,
Yeah,
we have plenty of time on that. So, I mean,
yeah, totally.
yeah, plenty of time. Plus, I know you and I both write for Dragonblade too. So
hmm
we got different
Yeah,
there's all kind deadlines everywhere. That's a message for people for sure. For the non-authors watching, it's like once you start getting the deadlines, those deadlines are real, and you got to like stack them up in the order that makes sense to get the work done in. It's not necessarily the order
absolutely.
you want to write in always.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people assume that because when I only self-published, that I wouldn't be working with deadline whatsoever. But there are deadlines everywhere. There's Amazon deadline if you do pre-order, deadline for your editors, book covers, and in case of anthology, yeah, you have to get your book on time. You don't want to disappoint other authors, and deadlines for like release parties or
Hmm.
takeovers, right? Just
Yep.
constant deadlines.
When you still have, I
Yeah.
don't know about you, but like for me, I still have an indie editor. So even all my indie stuff, I still have to like book a week that she's available to, and you have to plan that out because she books up. So then I have to make sure that I can get myself on her calendar when it
Mhm.
makes sense for when I need to turn in my stuff, especially in the anthologies where you have like
Yeah.
cutoffs. So certain times you have to have it back. It's like still a
Yeah.
lot of deadlines, and if you're getting covers created and you're doing all of that kind of stuff on top of it, and then you also want to set up your pre-orders. I mean, it's so much coordination and details.
Yes, and good editors book up quickly, or they're booked up for 6 months. So you have to book them ahead of time or whenever they're available, and then fit your schedule to their schedule.
Hmm.
So yeah, and it's a ton of work, but it's so much fun though still.
It is so much fun. I was like, this is for sure the best job I've ever had, and it's not even my full-time job yet, and it's
Mhm.
so much fun. Like so these conversations, the conversations you get to have with other authors, with their readers, and when you get to hear like them kind of come back and even chatting with readers about other authors' work. I just love chatting about like compelling stories. It's just so much fun. It's just a fun community.
And you have about 9 or 10 books written already, right?
I do. I'm about to start my 13th book for this year.
Wow.
And
So how
of
do you find
those, as I've written five full novels, the rest have been more novella length.
how do you find writing the steamy scenes because you have like five in a novella? How do you keep them fresh? How do you keep them interesting?
I stay true to the character themselves, and then I'm just always like I'm such a like passion and angst person, and so depending on like where you're at in your scene, there's like a lot of ways that you can make them feel more creative. But there are times when I do think about like the cadence of the flow, and it's like okay, I don't want to follow this exact cadence every time because that feels a little off. I write heroines that are very curious and even if they're virgins or non-virgins, like very into um like my heroines are horny too, and so
Oh,
see I think that helps too because if everyone is like you gotta like you have this like virgin who doesn't know anything and then you gotta like coax her into all the things to make it believable and make it not look like this guy's an asshole and like you gotta
yeah.
like do all the things. So I don't write my stories like that. I tend to give very spirited heroines who either like have heard about different things or they learn about stuff other ways or whatever to make it still believable and feel authentic to the era,
Mhm.
but not necessarily where I've got to do that build up every time of like getting
Yeah,
them
they're
beyond
more
their
assertive.
virginal
Yeah,
miss.
they know what they want. They ask for what
Yes.
they want. Yeah,
And I think
yeah.
that creates more tensions places, especially like, whatever wherever your setting is at the moment. And I think that
Hmm.
helps me has helped too.
Hmm.
But I had to be very
And
careful in this house party series with that because it's like I don't want everybody having the same kind of like in the same room at the house party. Like we can't take numbers here and like rent out the room. Like we're gonna have to like diversify where people are
yeah,
like
glutton
scattered
for
around this house.
punishment. Yeah, I can't. I can imagine working through that. Yeah, it's like no. They did missionary here. You don't want them to, have the same sequence of sexual acts. You gotta vary it.
No. And they can't all be in like a gazebo scene and they can't all be in like stealing off to like the library, like you gotta had to like mix them up a little bit so that it was like we had to make full use of the whole house. Let's just say that.
So, I'm guessing these are your. I'm guessing that the last book is going to have an orgy, right? There's going to be an
No.
orgy of everyone involved. You
No,
have
that
to. You have to. You
that
have
would have
to.
been
You
that
have
would
to.
have been hilarious.
You have to. And then like they decide that they did actually love their partner, and then they switch because they're more sexually compatible with somebody else. You have
I feel some second epilogues coming.
to. Yeah, wouldn't that be interesting? Oh, people are gonna be mad.
I did get so my editor and my beta readers all believe like that book 5 is the best of the 5, which I'm like,
Oh,
I know. I don't even have the cover for that one
oh,
yet. I will have it in a couple weeks.
exciting! Yeah.
Um, well, he's a virgin duke, and so
And how old is he?
he's 20. How old did I make him? I think he's 24, 25, something like that.
Okay, okay,
He's a virgin duke, and we have a wanton widow.
nice.
And he specifically came to the house party to meet her because he fully intends to remedy his virgin problem.
Virginness.
His virginness, yes. So he's intentionally seeking her out. So they are like a story of mutual trauma because they both have some trauma in their background.
Mhm.
and neither one want love or attachment, which is why they seem very well suited to hang out together. Well, and as you know, fate has other ideas for
Hang
what's going to
out.
happen to the
Is
two
that
of
what they're
them.
calling it now? Hanging out?
They're going to hang out together. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, so is there going to be some? So how old is she then? Is she much older?
She's about the same age. She got
Okay.
married when she was really young to her high school sweetheart,
Yeah.
or high school sweetheart. What am I talking about? Her like she was not in high
Equivalent.
school. Equivalent of like a
Teenager.
high school sweetheart.
Yeah.
But he ultimately gets cancer and dies. I mean, we don't necessarily call it that because they didn't call it that in the Regency era, but that's kind of what happens. And so
Mm.
she
That's so sad.
struggles with that, and she doesn't
Mhm.
want to. I totally cried writing it. It was like one of those things like you're writing and you're like, oh, like this is just so hard to get through. I do not drag it out because I feel like it's just so tough. And this is
It's
all first
painful. Yeah.
chapter stuff, so
Okay.
it's not deep in the book. It's first chapter stuff because then I'm like, okay, now we got to get out of that. But you think you had to feel that with her to understand her and where she's at. And he's got a little different trauma and a little different situation that
Mm.
kind of lends to why he is, is the way he is. And they just both need a bit of healing, and they didn't really know that they needed a little bit of healing in a different way.
If you had to give one advice to other authors or writers that are starting out or are thinking about publishing, what would you say?
I would say to keep going because I think we talked a little bit about it's really easy to get in your head. It's really easy to look around you and feel like you're this little like tiny ripple in this big sea of all of these like amazing authors. I know we all struggle with visibility and how do we get our work seen, and especially depending on the goals with it. And I would just say you've got to just keep going because it's one of those things like the more and more and more and more, it's like that snowball effect. Like you just have to keep building it. Same thing, like doesn't even matter if you only have 5 people following you on Instagram. Keep posting, keep going because the consistency of like keep writing, keep doing all the things. That's one. And then on the flip side of that, I would say try not to boil the ocean because I think it's like drinking from a fire hose too. So you got to like pick something that you think that you are really feel strongly about, or you feel like you can focus there. I don't focus on every social media platform because nobody has the bandwidth for that. That is, you'll never master it. So when I started out, I actually started out mastering the TikTok algorithm was where I started. But then I was like, just not as much historical romance on TikTok. I wonder if do better from a histrom perspective on IG. And so I switched over and I focused more on Instagram, and I don't focus a ton on my TikTok anymore, other than just like posting the same reels I post on Insta. So my advice there just being like, don't feel like you have to do everything because it's better to be really good at a couple things than it is to like be like mediocre at like any of them. Because if you can build a following in one place, like that's a following and that's an engaged following, and that's what you want rather than just people that are like 2 or 3 likes here and there scattered across 10 of the different social media platforms.
Do you find that there is a direct correlation between your Instagram posts and book sales?
So I wasn't sure until today. And I think yes, because based on the number of people that I've had messaging me telling me they bought my book today, or somebody had already messaged me to let me know that they downloaded it on Kindle Unlimited and they already read it and they loved it. I was like, well, thank you for that. And that was somebody that I don't even normally interact with. And
I
so,
love it.
based on that, I feel like yes, like because that's my most active following and that's where I spend the majority of my time. It's also where I built my street team and my ARC team, and they're super engaged. And so being a new author, that's invaluable too, having people that are posting and reviewing. It's so interesting to see the different strategies too.
Yeah.
Like I went for the KU strategy, whereas a lot of the author friends that I interact with or go for the wide strategy. And so
Mhm,
I'm learning from them and like learning from how that's going. And then,
mhm,
I'm figuring out this KU strategy because I went down this path because at first it was because, well, I'm a new author and I felt like being in KU would help me get my readership because I need to get
mhm,
those loyal followers. I need to get the people over to my mailing list so that these are the people that want to like continue, like my work and want to keep following along with me. Well, and then when I signed with Dragonblade, they're heavy KU. So I was like, well, that
mhm.
reaffirmed like, hey, maybe my readers are
Yes.
just going to be in
Mhm,
KU and I need to just embrace like that whole strategy.
mhm.
But it's like what you said, like the algorithms change and like there's different things that happen there and that means different stuff. And so it's just like constant learning and figuring out what everybody else is doing so that and what we can all like kind of band together to learn from it to see how we can just keep selling those books.
But at the end of the day, everyone's journey is different, and what sells on KU for one person doesn't for somebody else. So it's sort of it's trial and error.
It's
A lot of
100% because it's not
yeah.
even the social platforms. Somebody can
Mhm.
be fantastic at one platform and totally the people just don't connect with them on a different platform. Or you and I both write similar, like steamy, super things. And like it does not mean that the same marketing strategy is even going to work for us, like with our,
Right.
which is just crazy because I was trying to stalk what people are doing for ad content because I'm a little too early to be doing a lot of ad spend, but start like playing around with okay, like what kind of imagery would you use and what kind of like copy would you use like with these ads? And like there's so many different ways to look at it. And then I'll talk to different people and they'll be like, yeah, I'll be like, that was a really cool looking ad. Like that must be doing well. And they're like, it's not even paying out. And I'm like, okay, I guess
I
not.
know. I know. It's so complicated.
Well, and then even when you find something that works, then the algorithm can change and like that doesn't work anymore and you got to like basically start experimenting all over again to find like a winning ad, which is just crazy.
Yes. I mean, it was working. Why would you change it?
Just keep
Uh,
on, quit messing with
Amazon,
it.
just let us breathe for a moment. Just keep it the same for a while. So, what's the
Exactly.
best money spent for you as an author?
Good covers, that
Worth
is for
it?
sure worth it. I've got even leading up to today I've had so many comments and compliments on the Earl and the Vixens cover.
Yes, it's beautiful.
And then I've had multiple people even today messaging me saying how like they just love that cover. And like I had somebody message me that was like, I'm buying the book just because it needs to be on my shelf because the cover's so gorgeous. And I'm like, well, thanks for that.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
they weren't even
it's
a
beautiful.
Regency reader. There's another bookstagrammer that has been
Yeah,
hanging out. They don't even read Regency, and they're like, "Well, the cover's so gorgeous, it's going on my bookshelf." And so I'm like, "Well, thanks for
excellent.
that." So
Yeah,
like
I don't
covers
care why
and
you buy
editing.
my book.
Yeah, like hey, whatever makes you happy, like that's fine.
Mhm.
And that was like good editing because when I originally started this, I work a full time job, and my thought is I need to keep my costs as low as possible because I need to get profits as quickly as possible because I want to do this full time, so I got to be as profitable as possible to do that. So like, I'm gonna do everything myself. I don't need an editor. I don't need any of these things. And like you get in there, I didn't even have a single book out, and I for sure was like, because I was originally thinking I would try to design my own covers. I was like, I
Mhm.
was gonna figure it all out. I was like, nope. Editing was the first thing I hired. I was like, no, I need editing. This is not it. Me trying to edit this. Like, nope, need that. Then the covers, and then I hired an assistant because I was like between the job and like all the things, and then to be able to have some family, spend time with my
Yes.
family. It was like that was all like the money well spent stuff for me. A lot of the rest of it is trial and error with different promos or different tools and different things. But like those things, I'm like I don't think I would do as well if it weren't for that.
And the important thing is that you did your research before you hired someone, right?
Mhm.
You were fully engaged in the community and you learned who was recommended and who did well and who was available. The research is super important because there are a lot of professionals out there that are not as reliable as others, or
Very true. And there's a
not
lot
as
of
good.
scams out there for authors, like a lot
Yeah.
of like review scams and like just different things that if you don't know going into the community what to look for and like,
Mhm.
had to kind of learn some of that.
But it's quite expensive because just because you hire a professional, it doesn't mean they're going to do a good job. I went through 3, 4 editors before I landed, with my current editor, and I was quite surprised by how much capital it takes to self-publish if you want to do everything properly, professionally. But some people have the natural talent and they can totally
Totally.
design their own and edit their own, and that works for them. But I'm not like that,
Me
so
neither.
I need help.
Same. I say there are some people because you're right. I think that is like a thing people that I definitely didn't appreciate is how much money it costs
Mhm.
to really do, especially to do things the way like I want to do it and know that I want to build this as like a career and a business and hopefully a thriving one. But there are people that have this talent, and I wish I were one of them because it would save me so much money. But there are people that have that design eye, and they have those Photoshop abilities that they can do the things, and I'm like so envious. And then you have people that are you have that editing ability to like really have that attention to detail and catch everything. My also motivator, because I feel like I could do more of my editing, but my motivator was also speed to market because I'm like really trying to build my backlist. And it's like I can do that faster if I'm able to get in this like write and then revise and then have my readers read it and then go, okay, revise again and then get it to my editor. Like if I stay in that rhythm and then like pass it off and then cool, I can get started on the next project while that's with my editor.
Yeah, and we're sort of biased by then. We've read our own stuff like 50 times, so we're not gonna necessarily see what our readers see. So we do need fresh pair of eyes. Um, but it's not possible for a lot of people. It's expensive, and they may not have the capability financially to do that. So
True.
that's why when it comes to indie authors, I'm much more forgiving
Mhm.
about their grammar, punctuation, as long as the story is good. That's all I
100%.
care about. Yeah, because
I'm
everyone
not a
was
grammar
doing their
police
best.
in my reads. I'm like, because I actually like reading. Here lately, I read mostly indie authors and like the fellow authors in our historical romance community. Like that's more of what I read, and I
Me
am
too.
definitely when I read, I am not the grammar police, and I am not. It's more like, hey, is this a fun story that I really get into? Is the
Mhm.
spice good? Yes and yes. Fantastic. 5 star. Let's go.
Yeah, and there's some really talented indie authors that are not being recognized or noticed. So I try to read indie as well.
Same. I try to
Yeah.
promote, I try to share, try to do all the things because we're all just trying to make it, trying to
Mhm.
see if we can like, find our
Yeah.
people out there because the readers are out there. You just gotta get connected with the right
Yeah.
ones.
And that's the thing. There are enough readers to go around for every single indie author. And I think that's one of the reasons why authors are not as competitive
Hmm.
and they're more supportive because the readers in romance genre, they are voracious and they're so fast, right?
That's what because I've it's been easy for me to like adapt to like who my target I think reader is because I think it's me because I'm a KU subscriber. I'm a
Mhm.
voracious reader.
Yeah, me too. Mhm.
I read 200 books a year. I'm gonna fall a little short this year. I think I'm only at like 170 right now, and I don't know how many
Oh,
more I'm gonna get in
slacking.
the rest of
Oh,
the year. I'm
crazy.
slacking, slacking,
Jeez.
and my
What are you gonna
TBR
do
is
with all
so
your
long.
time? Oh,
My TBR is so long too, because like you all
yes.
keep
Well,
releasing books, and it's like I just have them
yeah,
all stacked up there waiting
25,000
for
bucks.
me.
Yeah.
So I'm like, so I'm
Yeah.
behind from my usual, but I usually read around like 200 books a year because I know that's how I am. Like I'm a voracious reader, and it's just amazing because there are people out there that read 300 and 400 books a year, and I'm like, I don't know how you do that. I'm like, that is
Yeah. How is that even
insane.
physically possible?
I'm like, I guess maybe if I didn't write, maybe I would. Because I don't know about you, but I don't watch TV at all. Usually, people ask
Yeah.
me, "How do you do it all?" Like this all sounds like a lot. So how do you do it? What gives? It was TV for me. I do
Yeah,
not
me
watch
too.
TV.
Ever since I started writing, I have no interest because what's in my head is more interesting to me, or the books I read are more interesting to me.
Yep. The most TV we watch, well, I watch Bridgerton. So anytime a new season of Bridgerton comes out, like, of course, I'll be watching that. And
Mm.
then usually my husband and I share an office right now, and we have a TV on the wall. And so he'll have a hockey game up or he'll have like a football game up. And that's great, like writing background noise, because it's kind of like there's something in
Mhm.
the, kind of puts a little noise in the house. And
Mhm. You got
you can,
energy going, and
yep.
yeah,
And you can kind of like, you can hear when it's kind of something's going on, and you kind of be like, ooh, like what's going on over here? And like take a little break and then go, okay, I'm going to refocus for a while and like get back to writing. And then still feel like we're kind of like hanging out a little bit because we're at least in the same room.
what trope is yours and your husband's romance?
It was an office romance.
Oh,
So one of those in like office romance, and they actually did not like prefer people like in the office to like date and stuff. So like maybe that's a little bit like forbidden romance too in there. Like I don't know.
oh. So you had to go behind her back.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yep.
how delicious. So how long were you able to keep it a secret?
Um for about a year or so until I got pregnant.
Oh, it's like, no, it's not his baby.
Like, don't worry about this. I ended
Yeah.
up getting another job though.
Okay.
So
Because of their policy, or
well, actually, it was more because their benefits really weren't that great,
okay.
and it was one of those things like, and I ended up making more money, and I switched into corporate. We were both working for like a smaller family-owned business then,
Okay.
and so I ended up switching
Uh,
and like switching over to go to like corporate. So that was where when I was back for Scat Trade back then, like one of the
mhm.
investment brokerage firms.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Makes sense. And your husband is still at the old work.
Oh no, he works for himself now. So that's
Oh,
the dream, is that if I can work for myself and he can work for himself, like we might get like an RV one day and just like drive around the world and
yeah.
like go do all,
Work
like go
from
see a bunch
anywhere.
of stuff. Yeah, like work
Yeah.
from anywhere because I can ride on the road and like it would just be so much fun.
Oh my goodness. That is an excellent idea. And what a lovely goal.
That's the dream. That's like
Yeah.
totally like what I'm working toward. And if I can do that and like get all these like fun stories in my head on, on page while we're at it, like that's just doesn't get any better than that.
What's next for you? What is your dream? What is your goal?
I really, maybe this is too lofty. We'll see. I don't know. I like lofty goals. I'd really like by the end of 2025 for my author biz to be profitable. It can be profitable by a penny, but I would love for it to be like profitable, like where I'm able to fully make enough money from like my book sales and to pay for, everything else that I'm doing and all of my marketing and like having my assistant and like all the things. So I think that starts trending and like how we start like scaling it to the next level.
Mhm.
That's my
Well,
goal.
book sales go up exponentially the more you release. So I think, maybe 2 months you'll be
hmm
profitable.
Like maybe it's like I do have a bunch of
3 months.
releases next year, so like,
Yeah. Amazing. So next week you can quit your job, your
well, it was
day
a
job.
99-cent pre-order, so I'm like, I think I'm gonna
Uh,
need a few more sales than that. That's
well,
the
your
hope.
readers are going to watch this video and they're going to, make sure that they make your dreams come true, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just simple. Like that's all you got to do.
That's simple. Just click.
Just
It's
click.
only 99 cents. Just click.
Yeah, just click.
One
99
little
cents. It's
click is
easy.
harmless. Well, Christina, it was so delightful to speak with you. Yeah, I'll be watching your journey. So everyone, go to ChristinaDianeBooks.com
Yes.
and sign up for her newsletter and follow her on Instagram as well. Her posts are super fun.
And say hi.
Okay. And say hi. Buy her books. Okay, bye.
Bye.